Let's talk about one of the most frustrating and difficult things when you are in the business of digital marketing, especially in launching. And that is, what do you do when your launch isn't working? And I'm going to give you a specific situation here. So you've done everything right so far. You opened your cart, which means you put you opened your product up for sale, and you're expecting the numbers to roll in, and crickets. Nothing happens. Okay, so what do you do when this happens? How do you fix that? Now, obviously, there are whole courses that can be taught on this. I've got a few minutes to give you a quick overview of some ideas and things that I've experienced to try to save my own launches and help others people's to do theirs. So the first thing to recognize when this happens is what's done is done. You can't go back and change anything. So maybe, you were a little clumsy in the way you made your offer. Maybe you had a deliverability problem in your email in the past. Maybe not enough people are on your list. Whatever happens, at this point, you can't do anything about any of that. The only thing you can do is move forward with what the situation is right now and what you can do to improve it into the future. So that's an important realization, is you can't sit around and point blame. All you can do is do what you can do to fix things into the future. By the way, and everything that I'm going to give you a list of things right here. Everything I'm going to cover over this next few minutes can also be done even if your launch isn't not doing well. If your launch is doing well, most of the things I'm going to talk about here are actually tools in your toolbox that you can apply to increase your sales, even if your launch is doing well. All right. So the important thing to do here is to analyze why crickets happen. Why aren't people buying? And as we think through this, that'll help us to solve what we can do. All right. So number one, this is what most people believe when this happens. They say something's off in the market. It's inflation. It's high interest rates. Somebody else is launching right now. Somebody else came in and launched last week and took all the money out of the market. Whatever it is, there's an impending war. Whatever those things are that are out there, people tend to blame it on that. I just got to say this. That's generally not the reason. Generally, the external world has very little to do with the situation. Sometimes it does. I mean, we had this thing called COVID. It shut down the world. And for a period of time, about 2 weeks, there were launches that were definitely affected by the fact the world had just shut down. But at the same time, most of the time, the fact that your launch isn't doing particularly well is not external. And by the way, even if it is, there's nothing you can do about that. So you just write it off and you go on, because you can't do anything about that external situation. It's outside. So you focus on what you can do and go do the best things you can. So the second and the real thing that you now have something you can do with it is this: you haven't convinced them. Now, there are several things that you haven't convinced your potential buyer of enough to get them to buy. Let's talk about what those are. The first one is that you haven't convinced them that this offer is a good value for them personally. Here we're focusing on the value of your offer. In a minute, we're going to talk about whether it fits for them and those kinds of things. But the question that they have is oftentimes, hey, I agree I have this problem. I agree it would be valuable to fix it. But when I look at your product, I don't agree that your product is a good enough value for me to spend my money on to fix this problem. So it's not a lack of belief that they need that solution. The lack of belief is your product you haven't got enough in this to convince me that this is going to be the solution to my problem. So the solution here is to improve your offer. Now, your offer has a number of different elements. Basically, your offer is here's what I'm giving you for this price. So it's a price and it's a value equation. When you are in a launch situation, and I'm assuming we're talking here about a Jeff Walker style launch, we've got some pre-launch kind of content, then we open cart, and then it's going to be open for 5 to 7 days, and then we're going to close the cart. When that happens, this is different than a product that's always going to be on. When a product is always on, you can go tweak price, but in that situation, you really can't change your price without looking desperate or foolish. So, hey, this product is $1,997. You come back a week later, hey, I've decided it's going to be $1,497. You can't do that. Once you've stated that price, that's your price. And you have to run the rest of this launch with that price, even if you wish you would have had it at a different price. All you can do is focus on the value side of the equation. That's all that's left to you. But frankly, it's the biggest lever you have in this entire equation. Okay, price is actually the smallest lever. It's what's in the product for them that's the biggest lever, and it makes all the difference. So the question is, how do I go about increasing the value in these situations? So in most cases, it's to add more. You add more to your offer. Let's talk about some of those levers, some of those things you can add more. So one of them is bonuses. I can add some more bonuses to do several things. Like I can add some bonuses that remove objections. So here's a great example. I'm teaching a course on how to create a course and sell that. All right. So one of the objections is going to be, I don't know what to do a course about. And so you can have a bonus about, here's how to choose what to do your course about. Another objection is, I don't have a list to be able to market that course to people. All right. And a bonus is, here's how to create a list. A third one is, I don't know how to figure out what to teach people. All right. Here's a bonus on how to learn what you've got to learn to be able to teach people that product. In other words, you're removing their objections. The second one is a bonus can flesh out content. So all three of the examples I just gave you for removing objections also applies in fleshing out content, because each one of those is a hole in your product. And so oftentimes you want your product to be a system. I've talked about that before. You want it to be do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, and you get this transformation on the other side of it. But sometimes in the process of teaching those do this, there's holes that are out there that you can't included because they don't fit within that system. That's a perfect place for a bonus to solve that particular part. Okay. So that's fleshing out the content. The third thing is oftentimes you want a bonus to be something that is so appealing that they just want to buy the course to get that. I've seen that happen a lot, where people, especially people who have a little bit more money, and I know that some of you are going, I would never do that. I have literally done it myself. And I've seen other people do it, where I have bought something that I have actually already bought before because I wanted that bonus that they were offering so much. Okay, so it does happen. Another thing, add modules. So in one of my programs, one of my launches, we were experiencing exactly what I was talking about. It's like, hey, man, we're 1/10 of what I forecast we would be. And so I had a conversation with a mentor of mine, and this mentor of mine said, well, Don, take me through the modules. I took him through it, and he says, so this will help them to build their business. Is there a way that you could add a module on how to actually create a business with this? In other words, how could they maybe take the things you're teaching them and turn that into their own business? And so here's what happens. With many products, people have to analyze it on, is it worth it to me? Is it worth $497 to me to learn how to meditate? Well, okay. They're going to weigh all those things about whether it's worth $497 to learn how to meditate or not. But what if you say, oh, here's how you can here's how you can make money with what I'm going to teach you about meditating. So you can become a coach. You can create your own course. You can do this to help other people learn how to meditate. Now, all of a sudden, it's no longer just a question of, is it worth $500 to me to learn how to meditate? Now it's, hey, I could see how I could turn this into a real business. And so it's no longer just a question of, is it worth $500? The question is, will I be able to make $500 back? And so adding these concepts about how to turn this into a business, how to make money with this, changes the price value relationship, where they're no longer trying to say, am I going to get my money's worth out of this? Or is this thing worth that? It's, do I really believe that I can get the business, the income to pay for this? So not virtually any, but most courses that I've seen could be add value by putting in a module or 2 modules more on how to turn what I just taught you into a business. So I'm going to teach you yoga. Okay. At the end of it, here's how to run your own yoga studio. I'm going to teach you weight loss. Here's how to help other people lose weight. I'm going to teach you coaching. All right, well, then there's an obvious one. Here's how to build your own coaching business. All these elements are there. Okay, speaking of coaching, another thing that you can add, which significantly increases the value, is to add coaching or consulting into your offer. So this can be a bonus. Well, it's going to be a bonus at this point. So here's this. I've got the whole program and people aren't buying. Well, one of the things you can say is, I'm going to give you an opportunity to get some coaching through this process. That can be delivered by you and or your team. And by the way, you don't have to figure all this out right at that moment when you're scrambling, trying to bring sales in to close off a launch in a week. You can just promise it and then go build the organization when you see how many you're going to have. So if you promise it, if you say, I got to go build the organization first, it's like, am I going to sell 300? Am I going to sell 3? And so you go create you go hire a bunch of people and then you've only got 3. Clearly, you could have done that one yourself. You don't need a team to do that. And so I suggest you actually, if you decide to do this mid-launch, I recommend you think about this before. But if you decide to do this mid-launch, don't build the infrastructure, promise it, and then go build the infrastructure afterwards. Another thing you can add is a live event. Live events, whether they are a virtual or an in-person tends to even work even better here, are an amazing bonus to add to most products, because in many cases, what people hear is, I can spend 8 weeks and learn this, or I can come and spend a weekend and learn this. And a lot of people won't even open your course for those 8 weeks. They'll just come to your live event and you teach them it all in that weekend. They go, whew, I just got amazing value out of this. So adding that live event can be an powerful piece. Okay. All right. Next is adding done-for-you services. So not all courses lend themselves to this, but some of them do, where here's the course, and I'm going to teach you how to do this. Maybe I could do part of this for you. So let's just imagine for a moment that you're teaching them how to start a business in something, okay? And I realize I tend to use this example a lot because that's where I live. That's what I do, is this helping people build their business. And so that's always the first example that comes to my mind. It's either going to be that or training aardvarks. Okay, so if I am, now I'm totally lost. I bring up aardvarks and my mind just goes away. Okay, so if I'm going to teach you how to build a business, maybe one of the things I will offer you is some research services. So you tell me the 3 things you're interested in. I will go and my team will go do research for you and give you a report back about each one of those 3 businesses. You know, those kinds of things. Maybe that one's not the best. We'll create your sales funnel for you. Bam. That's a bonus that will cause someone to buy your course just to get the bonus. Is, okay, we're going to teach you how to do all this, but hey, we'll just go build the sales funnel for you. And people go, I want that. Bam, they're in. Okay, that's a great service, a done for you that you can add. I admit, it's not easy. It's expensive for you to do that. But if it creates sales and you weren't going to get those sales at all, then maybe it's worth it. Next, another thing you can add is a multi-pay option. So let's say you're charging $1,997. You've got 3 payments of $697. And what you do is you say, or $797, and maybe you do 6 payments of blank. you add that to make it easier for people to get in is another addition you can make. All right. So those are just some of the many things that you can add. One of the core things I do whenever a launch isn't coming in, I look immediately, is my offer right? How can I improve this offer to give them more value for the same price? Just a cardinal rule. That's the first place you look. How can I add value? All right. Next place to look at. So when I said you haven't convinced them yet, the second place you have to convince them is you have to convince them that this is going to work for them, not somebody else, for them. All right. How can you convince somebody it's going to work for them? So one of those is testimonials and case studies. Now, I realize that that's showing them examples of it working for someone else. But if you're not gathering testimonials and case studies, go back and watch my other videos on this. I just did a video on creating a testimonial system. I encourage you to go look at that. But the more testimonials and case studies that you can apply, especially if you can apply them in ways that reflect directly what they are looking at. So I'm a plumber. Show me an example of another plumber who's used this to make it work, and I'll probably buy. Okay. I'm a plumber. Show me a yoga person that's made this work. I'm going to go, what? That's yoga. That's not plumbing. We're a different animal. And so the more specific you can get in being able to show people things that apply to them, the better off they'll be. Next, another great way to convince people that it is right for them is to give them the ability to talk with someone. This is really important during a launch phase. There are many, many people who they just need, they haven't got anybody in their life who they can trust to ask a question, do you think this would be right for me? And certainly nobody in their life knows your program well enough to tell them if it's right for them. And so giving them the ability to talk to somebody who will just listen to them, hear their situation and say, yeah, I think it's a good idea, or no, I don't think it's a good idea for you. Many people, by the way, and I'm just going to put this in as a side thing, many people are ready to buy. They just need to have somebody give them permission to buy. They just need somebody to say, yeah, I think that's right for you. And they'll buy. Now, certainly don't misuse this. Don't use this in any way that is manipulative, that is incorrect, that is lying to them. But it is astounding how many people it's totally right for them. They know what's right for them. You know what's right for them. And they just need someone to say, yeah, I think this would be a good idea for you. All right. Next, having chat available on your site gives you the ability to do that, to answer the key questions they've got, to tell them, to help look at their specific situation. But oftentimes it's like, it is astounding to me on chat how many people didn't understand what you said when you said when you gave them what the offer is. You go, yeah, that's in there. And they go, oh, I didn't know that. Well, then I want it. And so having chat is almost an absolute must in this day and age. Call options, the ability to actually talk to somebody. All these things are individual. They're tough to scale. That's okay. One scalable option is a Q&A webinar, giving people the ability to get on with you and bring up some of those situations. Those are not the easiest webinars to run because there'll be a combination of two types of people on there. One type who are trying to pull every piece of information they possibly can out of you for free. And then the second group is a group of people who are saying, will this work for me? The challenge is me telling the plumber it's going to work for him. The yoga teacher over here is hearing that and saying, well, that's a plumber. And so it doesn't apply. So it's not an easy call, but it is a call that's important to have in many situations, is that ability to do that. Another thing that you can do to help them convince them that it's right for them is to offer them a longer guarantee. Why in the world will that help convince them it's right for them? Well, if you give a longer guarantee, what it does is it gives them a longer trial period to figure out whether it is right for them or not. And a longer guarantee can be something you shift within a launch. You can say, hey, I had a 14-day guarantee. I'm going to extend that to a month. It's something you can shift during a month, during a launch, that could actually move the needle. But even better is a risk reversal guarantee, something that says, okay, if this doesn't work for you, then I'm going to do this, and it actually gives them back more than what they did. So a great example of a risk reversal guarantee that I'm not necessarily recommending to you is you pay me $2,000. If you don't make $2,000 back by the end of the course, then I'll pay you $3,000. Okay. So that's a risk reversal where you're putting the risk on you being able to teach them appropriately. Now, that particular one has got all kinds of fraud opportunities, but realize anything you can do to remove risk significantly increases the probability you're going to make the sale. Okay. The other thing that you need to do in this process of looking at crickets on your launch, hey, it's not working, is to look at ease of purchase. So very, very honestly, I have seen, you got to make sure there's no tech issues. I have literally seen launches where people could not buy. They were trying to buy. It's like, I want to give you money. Your website won't take my money. And so make sure there is no tech issues. You should do this before you launch, by the way. But during a launch, if you've got really literally crickets happening, go check your tech. You may have had something shift in the meantime that made it so that people actually cannot buy. Next, remove purchase barriers. So if you, for example, require someone to have a conversation with a member of your team before they can buy, it's like, that's great, but can you give them the option to buy without having to have that conversation? Because some people don't want to have that conversation because they feel like they're going to get sold. And so if you remove that, keep it on as an option, but remove it as a requirement, you just made the process of purchasing easier. And anytime you can make that process of purchasing easier, you can influence sales. So one of those is show a buy button earlier. So a lot of people will put up a video and they're going to talk, they're going to do a sales video, and they're going to talk in that video for 43 minutes before they finally make the offer. And so they don't show the buy button until 43 minutes into that video. Well, what you just did is you just put up a barrier to purchase. And so I'm not recommending you do not do that. That's a double negative. So I'm not telling you not to delay showing your buy button. Related concept to this, give them a scrubbable video, giving them the ability to move within the video and look within and look at different places within the video. Again, I'm not telling you not to do it, but both of those, by removing the scrub bar and by delaying the buy button, what you've just done is you just made purchase more difficult. And if you're not selling anything, one of the things you may want to consider to do is to remove anything that is making purchase difficult. I know I've mentioned this before, but these things also apply in the making purchases easier. Put on a chat option so they can talk to you. Make sure you give them the opportunity to talk with a human to be able to deal with things. Make sure that you have fast support responses happening. So you probably need to get a couple more people, even if it's just for 1 week, to work on your customer support team to make sure that you're not, here's what happens in big launches. You may not know this, but when someone is doing a big launch, they're going to sell to 300, 500, 1,000 people, they're probably getting between 3,000 and 5,000 emails a day. And what ends up happening is that backlog becomes instantaneous. From the moment you open cart, you'll have 2,000 emails within 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And what ends up happening is if you answer those on a first in, first out basis, what ends up happening is you're not going to get to all those emails in a day. And that's one of the problems with these big launches is you simply cannot be responsive because you got so many people who need you to be responsive. And so the faster you can get back to them, the more responsive you can be, the better off solving that crickets issue will be. Giving you an overview. I'm literally giving you 15 years of experience in one video for free, which I cannot believe I'm doing. Okay. All right. Now, I just went to the edge of big launches. Now I'm going to go back to small launches, where most people's launches are, where you're going to sell 1 to 5 units of whatever it is that they're selling. In that case, if you've got nothing happening, you need to turn on your personal invitations process. Basically, what you're doing here is you are making sure that you are personally giving invitations to the right people who definitely should be buying. So the first thing to do in every launch, large or small, is to make sure you actually go into your emails and that they're being written like human beings, not like machines, not by ChatGPT, and certainly not sounding like a big corporation. And so so having these emails be personable, easy to read, easily to access, short sentences, all those kinds of things that make those emails be easier for people to process will improve your sales. Next, Q&A webinars help you to be able to answer people's questions at scale. I talked about that before, but I'm bringing it up here because it applies here. Next, this is a key concept. If you've got a list of 300 people, and of those 300 people, 30 of them are actually clicking on your emails, you've got basically a marketplace of 30 people that you're trying to sell your product to. If you've got 30 people you're trying to sell your product to, I strongly suggest you use personalized videos. So Bonjoro, the several different services that do this, where you come on and you say, "Hey, Megan, this is Don. I noticed that you asked this question is in a response to down in the chat. I just wanted to get back to you. And number one, thank you so much for asking that question. Number two, I want to answer that question and then answer that question and then give them a personal invite to buy." And what you're doing here is you are reaching out to that person on a one-on-one basis on an email that will come, and it has, when you use these services, it has a animated GIF happening there. And then when they click on it, it starts with, "Hi, Megan," and they hear the name and they go, "Whoa, this is not a video that he created for 2,000 people. This is a video, I can't even say it. This is a video he created for me." And they listen to it and they pay attention to it. And it can be incredibly powerful. While we're on the subject of personalizing, hey, pick up the phone and call the 10 people who should be in this course, who have expressed to you in the past that an interest in being it. Maybe they've been past clients, maybe they're coaching clients, maybe they're whatever it is, and you know that they need to be on it. You should do that. So those are all things you can and should be doing to improve your sales when you've got nothing happen after you launch. I'm going to throw out one more concept. Make sure your emails are actually getting delivered. That's really, really key. And make sure at the end of all this that you absolutely debrief your launch. So you look at every element, you do it in writing, and you record it for the future so that later on you can look at it back. Because 6 months from now, when you do your next launch, you're not going to remember all the details of everything you just dealt with and you just struggled with. But make sure it's in writing so you fix it for next time. Okay? All right. Speaking of Megan said, "Thank you for sharing your experience." You're welcome. What are the names of how to do individualized videos? Go Google it, but Bonjoro is one of them. BombBomb is another one. There's some less expensive ones that have come up on places like AppSumo lately that allow you to be able to do that. Patricia, I can see your question here. I'm going to get into it in more detail. I want to read up. I don't want to do this while I'm on with everybody else. I'll definitely respond to your comment here. So those are some of the things. Again, I've had launches that have had crickets. I've had launches where it's like, what am I going to do now? And I just shared some of those things with you. I hope they're valuable for you. Let me know things that I missed. Put them in the comments. This is Don Crowther saying, just go do this stuff.